I see some familiar faces here. Very nice to see you all. And to the new faces, nice to meet you. So my name is Dr. Quintana. I am a school counseling instructor here at USC. I've been here since 2019, January. So some of you may have met me during your group counseling course, your counseling theories course. You may have met me in a human development course or any of the other courses that I have taught. So I've been here for a little while. I've had an amazing time, and I'm definitely invested in supporting the next generation of school counselors. So I know that a lot of times, because this was my situation as well, when we graduate, when we leave these programs, we often wonder what are our options. I will be very transparent with you and tell you that when I graduated from my school counseling program, 10 plus years ago, I could not find a school counseling job. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. And so in New York City, for the most part, teaching positions there are a plethora of positions, and I was a teacher at the time. I thought it would be very easy for me to transition because I was already a part of the Department of Education, and that just simply was not true. They actually had more school counselors, the district actually had more school counselors than they needed. And so typically you can't get a school counseling job unless someone retires or someone dies. That's pretty much what it is. The district pays a lot of money. The salaries are super high. And so people typically don't leave those school counseling positions. I had to relocate. I ended up moving to Washington, D.C. for a teaching position and ended up applying for school counseling jobs. And that was how I got into school counseling finally. But prior to that, I wanted to make sure that I was still somewhat connected to the counseling profession. So I worked on my LPC, and that is how I kind of became a licensed professional counselor. Uh, Prior to getting the LPC, I was able to work in various agencies as a case manager. So I did substance abuse counseling. I did a lot of teen groups, and I had an individual caseload. So I was still able to utilize my counseling skills with the specific population that I wanted to, even if the focus was just substance abuse and it didn't really focus on the college and career or the academic piece rather that we often talk about in our schools and in our school counseling program. So my pathway was a little different. And I realized that I wasn't the only person in my program who wasn't employed. And again, this was like 10 years ago. Now there are more opportunities regarding schools and institutions. So back then, I didn't really know what my options were. And of course, as time went on, I learned about different opportunities. So I definitely wanted to share them with you. And this is just the short list. There are things out there and you just really have to kind of be creative and really think about what it is that you want to do and how you can kind of marry school counseling to whatever it is that you're interested in. So the first thing that popped up that I'm going to show you, and I want you guys to write this website down. It's called Higher Ed Jobs. Okay. Some of us don't realize that with a master's degree, we can teach, right? We can be faculty. Oftentimes they do want experience. However, I always say you won't know unless you apply. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen because I want to show you what just popped up on my higher ed screen. And hopefully this is something that can benefit you. So San Mateo County Community College District is looking for 5 individuals with master's degrees, so you don't need a PhD, to be full-time faculty within their district. This is here, I know you all know how to read. I am not going to read each line, but a lot of what they're looking for may be something that you all have, or something that you're interested in learning more about, or skills that you may have acquired during your practicum or internship. So you could definitely sell yourself because you all do have some skills. But I think it's important to make sure as you're reading the job description, that these are things that you are connected to. These are things that you want to do, that you're not just applying just to say, oh, I need a job and I need a job right now. Because I've spoken to quite a few of you about how it feels to be unhappy at many of these dream jobs. And sometimes we are in such a rush to get a job that we often don't think about the impact and how it impacts our own well-being and our own personal lives. So one of the things I like to share with folks is when you go on a job interview, even though they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them too, because you want to ensure that it's a good fit. So as you're reading the job description and just basically what the vacancy announcement says, you want to make sure as you're reading, it is a good fit. So it talks about closing equity gaps, and it talks about engaging in equitable practices, right? And these are things that we've talked about in this program. It talks about encouraging positive race consciousness and embracing differences. Reflecting on teaching practices, making them more culturally responsive. So these might be things that you're interested in as you are familiar with them already. Here are some of the duties and responsibilities. So you would be providing comprehensive counseling services, you would be providing group counseling, you would be assisting students and helping them to learn about different educational options. You'd be teaching some courses like a college and career success course, etc. But again, they are looking for 5 people. And so if this is something that you're interested in applying to, I would say get on Higher Ed Jobs and apply as soon as possible. If you know that you, for example, if you're graduating this summer, if you're graduating at the end of the semester, it doesn't hurt to kind of throw your hat in anyway, just to see what happens. And see, they have the G word here. It says guidance counseling, right? But we know that that's school counseling. And this may be something that you all are interested in. So definitely come. And other than the Promise Scholars Counselor, Higher Ed Jobs, they do have other positions, other faculty positions, community college positions. You can really look and click on different things that they offer. Sometimes the universities do ask that you have a doctoral degree, but there are other positions. For example, if you want to adjunct and teach a practicum or an internship or fieldwork course, and some of the other courses, they do allow, some universities do allow master's level applicants. So this is one area, this popped up and I said, oh, this would be perfect to kind of share with you guys. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about that. There is also one more position that I saw that I wanted to share with you somewhere else. And then we'll just talk about a little bit of what I put on that list, but I'm going to share one more job opportunity with you guys. I think they're looking for, was it 20? I know it's a large number of applicants they were looking for. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Okay. I'm going to share my screen again. And this is on EdJoin. Okay. So it's allowing me to share, but it won't let me show my screen. LAUSD is also hiring. I feel like this was like 35 positions. They have a lot of openings for this position. And this is a secondary school position. I know a lot of you have expressed, 35. A lot of you expressed that you wanted to work in high school settings. This job specifically targets or looks for individuals who are looking to work and targeting improved outcomes for Black students. And so in many of your courses, we've talked about just our diverse student populations and some of the barriers in which our students face. Again, we've also talked about cultural competency. I've shared some ASCA DEI resources with some of you guys. You're all familiar with a lot of what's going on now socially in our country with Black Lives Matter and just so many other things that are happening. And so this district has opened up 35 positions for those of you who are interested in providing supplemental counseling support to monitor Black student achievement. So this might be something else that you want to look into. I'm not sure, again, how many of you are graduating from the program this summer or at the end of this semester. But again, even if you don't have your PPS right away as soon as you graduate, I would still apply anyway. This is something I would still apply to and see what happens. So this was something else that can, and remember, when you submit your application, when you're submitting your resume, that is to get you to the interview, right? That is what's going to get you to the interview. Everything else that you do there in that interview is going to help seal the deal and confirm whether or not that institution wants to hire you for that job. And so a lot of times when we go into interview, and I always encourage people to practice, but you want to make sure that you're bringing yourself to these interviews as well. So you don't want to just regurgitate what was on your cover letter and what was on your resume, because they've already read that. They already know that. So read the job summary, really think about what it is that they want. Think about the skills that you have, right? And how what it is that you already possess or what you can do, how that is going to make you the perfect fit for that role. And if you don't have, clearly, because you were never a school counselor before, please definitely dig into those practicum experiences. Don't say, oh, I've never worked with students of color, because that's a lie, right? You did it in your practicum experience. You did it in your field work. So just because you didn't get paid to do it doesn't mean that you don't have those experiences. So definitely make sure that you are boosting up those experiences. That's exactly what I did when I got my school counseling gig in DC. I utilized a lot of my experiences. I talked about a lot of my experiences from practicum, from field work, and then from the job at the substance abuse clinic when I worked with teens. And I was able to really highlight some of the things that I did, because you want to talk about outcomes and things you can do. You don't want to just talk about things that you have. So you don't want to just say, oh, I have this degree, I have this certificate, okay, but what can you do? What can you produce? How can you impact these students? So these are the types of things that administrators want to hear. And although you might feel like you're at a disadvantage because you have never been a school counselor before, so you're new and you don't necessarily have the experience that a seasoned counselor may have, one thing that is attractive about new school counselors is the fact that you all have a blank slate. You have never done this before. And so you may be more willing and more open to work. You may bring in fresh ideas and things that the school needs to really move them forward, as opposed to someone who may be seasoned but stuck in their ways and want to do things the way they want to do them. So don't look at the fact that you don't have paid school counseling experience. Don't look at that as a disadvantage, because it definitely can be advantageous. I'm going to go back to the screen with the list of jobs that you may want to look into following graduation or during. For example, some of you may not know this, but life coaching is an option. There are several organizations that offer life coaching certificates. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but you can actually be a life coach without a certificate, without having a background in coaching. I don't advise that. I don't advise that you leave this session now and say, okay, I'm going to go and be a life coach. Let me figure out what it is that I want to do. I would not advise you to do that at all. However, there are plenty of programs. There is one website, and I can post the link in the chat area for board certified coaching. If you have a master's degree, I think you need to just do 30 hours of coaching with a coaching professional. I think there's an exam or something that's there, but there's a little minor things that you have to do to get the board certified coaching. There's also some other websites, and I'm guessing Khan maybe or Itza, I can send them to you. I actually found it in a school counseling Facebook group. Someone posed a question about life coaching, and folks just started posting websites and links to all of these programs and organizations where people could actually get life coaching certificates. And what folks were doing were they were taking the certificates and they were creating their own lane. Like someone said, well, I became a college and career coach. So now, in addition to my full-time job, I offer consultation and coaching for parents who want their students to have separate college and career coaching. And we know that a lot of times in our schools, we don't necessarily have college access programs or college access professionals in our buildings. So you could actually create a lane and be able to offer that service either low cost by the hour or per session or package or however it is that you want to do, so that you can create an additional stream of income. So coaching is one area that a lot of school counselors are getting into. Social services caseworker, a lot of those jobs do require either a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in school in social work or a related degree area. So when you see things that say a related degree area, typically it's psychology, counseling, those types of things. If you're interested in working with students and families in the areas of foster care, adoptions, child protective services, individuals with disabilities, those types of things, that is definitely an area that you can look into that will, of course, add to your skills and your expertise. So let's just say you only do it for a year or you only do it for 6 months, and then you decide, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to apply for school counseling jobs again. You can really speak to a lot of the work that you've done with these families and these children, and that does transfer over into the school system. Remember, a lot of our students have disabilities. A lot of our students are in foster care. A lot of our students deal with abuse, neglect, trauma, and you can come in with the specific skill set and really be able to offer not only other students, but students within this specific population. You can offer them that support that many school counselors can't, because we don't have a class on foster care. We don't have a class on child protective service. We don't have a class on these specific areas, but you actually getting a job in these areas and then bringing it back to the schools, that's a plus, right? The principal knows, oh, wow, okay, well, I can trust this person that they're going to do their job. They're going to do it well, that they can be trauma informed or trauma focused. So that's something else, again, that if you don't go the school counselor route in the beginning, if you feel like I'm not going to get a job in August or in September or whatever, this is also another option to kind of help you build. And for some folks, they end up staying on the agency side, on the clinical side. And for others, I've seen others where they just kind of transition off into the schools. Someone contacted me the other day about a college and career counselor position. And this position was in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure what this looks like where you all are individually, because I know we're all spread out. But if you do not see a school counselor position, look for college and career counselor positions or advisor positions on the high school level. If this is not found in your traditional public schools, you can look at charter schools, independent schools, friendship schools, virtual schools. You can look at other types of schools to see what they offer regarding college and career advisor positions or college and career counselor positions. Along with being employed by the high school, you can also be employed through a college access program. So those of you who took college and career counseling with me may be familiar with Upward Bound, Gear Up, or some of the other programs that we have spoken about in the past. So even if you don't work directly for the school, if your program has a contract with the school, you can still be placed in that building to help support the school and the school counselor in getting these kids to college and careers. So that is something that you might want to consider, especially those of you who mentioned that you want to work in a high school. A lot of you have expressed that you want to help students get to college. You want to help them get from point A to post-secondary success. So this might be something that's right up your alley, because then you don't have to focus on things like academic or social emotional. You're purely focused on that college and career aspect. And when I say not social emotional, not academic, I'm not saying that to be like a bad thing. I'm saying that this would be your focus. This would be your job, that you wouldn't be pulled for anything else because this is what you would be doing. And those of us who have done our practicum and our field work, we know that our site supervisors are often pulled in various directions, sometimes doing things that they really shouldn't be doing. But if you're hired as a college or career counselor or an advisor, you are typically doing that job and that job only. So that's something to think about. There are also college advisor positions. And typically, I've found in looking at those jobs that they typically ask for a bachelor's degree. Some may ask for a master's degree, but I haven't seen it doesn't say like a master's degree in school counseling or a master's degree in advising. A lot of the positions will just say, preferred bachelor's degree or preferred master's degree. It's definitely something for you to think about. Because as you're advising students and talking to them about what classes to take and what majors and all those types of conversations, you kind of get a feel for who they were or where they ended on the high school side. right? We know that a lot of students who are going into college, sometimes they really are unprepared. So having that advisor to kind of meet them on the other side, it kind of helps to build that foundation and get them prepared for that post-secondary success. So if you are interested in working in higher ed, or if you're still interested in working with, I mean, they're kind of like adult teenagers, so to speak. They're like 18, 19 years old, or what have you, if you're working with freshmen who are within that group, our Gen Zers and such. If you're interested in still doing college and career work, you can do it on the university side. And then again, if you're only doing that for a year or two, you might say, okay, I want to do K through 12. I've done higher ed. I know what it looks like on the other side. Now I want to take what I've learned and kind of pour that into the high school side so that I can help those students get ready for what's to come. So that's something to think about. I talked about the substance abuse counselor. I know in New York, we have something, a certificate called a KSAC 1 and KSAC 2. And those certificates require you to, I think maybe take a class or two, take an exam, you get the certificate. It's not a license, so it's not a mental health counselor license. And I'm not sure what the equivalent to the KSAC would be in California, but typically you can work on that or not, but you can work on that certificate as you are working in substance abuse. And we know that when we work in substance abuse, like there is no specific population. Anybody can walk through those doors at any moment looking for help and for support. So it also allows you to work on those clinical skills with adults. So if you are interested in doing that LPC piece, there are LPCs that work in the substance abuse arena, along with social workers, along with psychologists and psychiatrists. So now you are getting familiar with or getting exposed to various teams of individuals and learning what they do. And this is for those of you, again, who are interested in that clinical side. If you're not interested in the clinical side, but you still want to be able to counsel adolescents and teenagers who many are clients within these programs, this is still a great opportunity for you to sharpen those counseling skills as you are thinking about transitioning into the school setting. Again, for me, I thought it was a great experience. Like I said, I ran teen groups. I didn't even know those existed in substance abuse settings and clinics. It just so happened that my supervisor saw that I had experience in teaching and working in K through 12 settings. And she asked me, did I want to work with the younger population? And so I still had an opportunity. And I think that's what made the experience for me so awesome. I mean, I also worked with adults, but my main population was teens. And they were there because they were mandated. They were caught, with marijuana or what have you. And they were mandated to treatment. So that was a really great experience for me, and it definitely helped me to sharpen my skills. So when things like this came up in the K through 12 setting, things were familiar to me. I understood, a lot of what was happening. If I had parents that dealt with substance abuse issues, if I had students that dealt with substance abuse issues, I kind of came in with an extra level of skills. We talked about the adjunct, we didn't talk about the adjunct, but we talked about faculty positions, those of you who do want to teach or provide counseling for that matter on the university level. There are also counseling positions in the university. So typically all universities have a counseling office where there are free counseling services that are offered to students. Typically it's free counseling students at public institutions, free counseling services to students in the building. And so if you are interested in providing counseling services, that is something that you would want to look into if you want to provide mental health. Let me be very specific, mental health counseling services, because these counseling positions are not academic or college and career focused. They really are mental health counseling positions. Sometimes they require that you have a license. Other times they do not. I've seen student mental health counselors who are supervised by the university psychologist or the university social worker, and that's the person that they kind of report to. But they have a caseload of students. It's confidential services. So it's something, it might be something that you guys want to consider, providing mental health counseling services on the university side. But again, as mentioned, if you're interested in teaching, there are also adjunct opportunities, as well as full-time opportunities, which I showed you guys on higher ed jobs that you might be familiar with. We talked about coaching a little bit. So again, that academic or career coach. And now that I think about it, career coaching doesn't necessarily just have to be for college, and career coaching doesn't necessarily have to be just for your teens, right? Just for your adolescents. If you want to work with young adults, right? If you want to work with folks who are maybe between the ages of 18 and 25, individuals who may not know which path or which direction they're interested in. Many of us graduate from college and we don't know what we want to do. We don't know who we want to be, right? We leave undergrad and we're kind of like, okay, I just finished this 4-year program. Now what? So again, this is something that is popular. It's on the rise, and I will put the link to the board certified coaching website that I know about, but I am going to send the other links to Khan and Itza so that they can disseminate those to everyone as well. Those of you who are interested in hotlines, there are a lot of crisis hotlines, suicide hotlines, different types of hotlines to help address immediate needs for individuals who call in and need it. Of course, these jobs come with a lot of responsibility, and oftentimes they can take a toll on you. I know that most of the people that I know who work either hotlines or mobile crisis, they did not do this. This is not a long-term career. After a while, you know, that vicarious trauma sets in, a lot of those things kind of set in, burnout. This is a very heavy job. However, you do not need, most hotlines don't require you to have an LPC or an LPCC or MSW or those types of things to obtain these jobs. If you're interested in providing either crisis services through the internet or over the telephone, there are opportunities out there that exist. I'm trying to think of one that I actually thought about working for way back when. It'll come back to me, but I believe it was a crisis hotline. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, because when I spoke to them on the phone, I asked about hours. Sometimes they're non-traditional hours, right? Sometimes they need you to work, you know, in the middle of the night or very early in the morning. It really depends. Crisis can happen at any time. So they definitely want folks who can be flexible. With COVID now, I'm sure a lot of these jobs can actually happen at home. So you're able to provide those services from home or from your computer. But again, most of the time, back when I was looking into these jobs, there was like a hotline center where everyone kind of worked from. So if you're interested in crisis counseling and responsive services, definitely look into hotline opportunities. Again, non-conventional hours, but it definitely gives you all some experience to acquire those skills. And again, those are transferable to the schools if that is something that you intend on moving forward with afterwards. Guidance counselor, hate the G word, but the military still uses it. So the guidance counselor on the military base. So some of you know that I've shared with you, I was a school counselor for elementary school on a military base some years ago. This is not what I'm talking about, although you guys can apply to jobs on the military base as a school counselor. So you can do that, and there's high schools and middle schools. This particular job that I'm talking about is for service members themselves. So many of them are looking to getting into degree programs. Some of them are leaving the military and they need counseling support in terms of reintegrating into the civilian community and looking at jobs and college opportunities. A lot of it is really vocational based. A lot of it is career counseling based, not necessarily mental health counseling, but it reminds me of school counseling, but for adults. So not that you're looking at transcripts and academic stuff, but that college and career piece is definitely there. You can find these jobs on usajobs.gov, usajobs.gov. I looked last night because I wanted to show you all a sample job description today. I didn't see anything come up, but that doesn't mean that, because these things come up all the time, that doesn't mean that it won't come up. The last time I saw that position was probably about a year ago, but I've stopped looking for it since then. So I don't know how frequent they come up, but it is something that I think many of you would be interested in, again, if you still want to do that college and career piece, and it requires a school counseling degree. It says a degree in school counseling or guidance counseling. You guys have that. So that is something, and it doesn't require certification or PPS credential or anything like that. So that's also a plus. So definitely, you know, when you remember, if that's something that you want to consider in working with service members on a military base, if you all live near military bases, naval bases and such, you might want to look that up, because again, it's kind of like school counseling, but for adults. And then I've also spoken to many of you all and sent links to some of you guys for international school counseling positions as well. So I know that when many of us graduate, we think, okay, let me apply to jobs in the local area. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, you're going to have to think big when it comes to school counseling, because oftentimes there are more of us than there are positions. Now, I will tell you that international school counseling could be being a school counselor in Mexico, Ecuador, Peru. It could mean, you know, going to Germany. I have a friend in Sweden. I know folks in China, Japan, Korea, and Thailand. So it just because it says international, it doesn't mean that you're going to be all the way in Australia. Again, it could be Mexico. I know someone who's a school counselor in Mexico at an international American school. So that might be something that you want to think about. With these international school counseling positions, oftentimes the money is tax-free. They pay for your accommodation, so they'll pay your rent, they'll pay your utilities. You sometimes get transportation. There's a lot of perks that come with that. Of course, you get a visa. Your spouse gets a visa. If you are married, your children are able to go there. Your children are able to go to the school tuition free. So there are a lot of perks that come with many of these international school counseling positions. The school is very diverse in that not only do you have students maybe from the local community that attend the school, but you also have children of like ambassadors and expats and diplomats and those types of things too. So international school counseling could also be a way for you to kind of get your foot in the door if you are open to relocating, immersing yourself in a different culture, learning a new language. Typically, the contracts are like a year or two. Some schools do have contracts for like 3 years. But people are able to build community there. They build lifelong friends. They give you a free travel back home, I think once in the summertime. I know that my friend said that in Sweden, they give them additional money if they have, I think, children under 5. She said the healthcare is amazing. The food is really, really healthy. So you can eat like for free at the school. There was a lot of other things she talked about that. Oh, she could get her citizenship in 3 years. So she can be a dual citizen in Sweden and here in the States. So there's a lot of little perks that come with working overseas, if that is something that you all are interested in. But please definitely do not confine yourself to just thinking one track that all I can do is just school counseling K through 12 with this degree, because there are other things. Clearly, this is just my list here, but there are more things and more opportunities that are always popping up. If you see a job that you're interested in, if it's a counseling job and it's not in a school, and it says something along the lines of social work or related field, psychology or related field, mental health counseling or related field, don't hesitate to apply, because we are that related field. You guys do have experience, not only in theory, but practice. You guys have practiced these skills and stuff. And you never know if you don't apply, if you don't try. I don't know if you all are interested in tutoring. It's not really school counseling related, and you really don't need a school counseling degree for it, but a lot of people do end up providing tutoring services, either private or through programs. I know VIP Kid is one. There was another one, I'm trying to remember, Khan, I don't know if it was the class you were in. I posted some links. There were some high paid tutor positions where they were paying like thousands of dollars for people, teachers and people with master's degrees, almost like a live-in tutor, but you have like your own apartment, they pay your rent, they do all these things, and then you provide tutoring for the kids. And for the life of me, I can't remember that website, but I don't think it was Bracella. Oh God, it was someone who asked me about it recently, and I sent the links off. So I will look for that link as well. And those again are more, those high paying private tutoring jobs. But along with that, there's also VIP Kid and other online tutoring gigs, if you all are interested in that as well. Any questions?
Yes, I see that Natalie has a question for you. Is there a good site for international school counseling positions?
There is. There are two that I know, and I am gonna put, one is ISS. I'm gonna post that in the chat area, and the other one is called um SCHROLE something. I'm gonna post those now. I'm gonna start posting links in there so you guys can copy and paste and save. Okay. So here is the first one. Teach Away is also another one. My friend who's in Sweden, she did Teach Away and started in Abu Dhabi. And then after she was finished, that was a 3-year contract. She moved to Sweden. She's maybe about 30 minutes outside of Stockholm. Search Associates is also another good one, very popular. And if you guys are on Facebook, there are several groups. If you guys are interested, there's the International School Counseling Association. They have a job board. It's like $100 a year for membership. I'm a member as well. They have conferences. They have like virtual meetups, and they give resources. But along with that, there's a job board where they're always posting international school counseling positions. So SCoT is another, and I'll put their link there. SCoT is also another organization. Any other questions?
I know you briefly talked about the LPCC certification, but do you recommend any other certificates that you know of that you encourage us to also get aside from our PPS too?
I know that SCoT has certificates. I've shared some. Some have been like extra credit assignments, like trauma informed or trauma and crisis and trauma specialists, individuals with disabilities. So I noticed that some students, one young lady actually put it on her resume and then spoke about, in an interview, spoke about how she would utilize, you know, what she's learned from that certificate and just what she's learned in the field during practicum and internship. She kind of talked herself up, saying, okay, well, not only do I have my PPS credential, I've also been trained as a specialist in supporting students with disabilities, and kind of speaking to some of that. I think that would be helpful. SCoT also has one for career counseling and college admission specialist. So you can also, if you're interested in those, and I would probably wait until they go on sale, because I know right now they're like $99, but a lot of times when they go on sale, they're like $50. During COVID, they were $30. So folks were kind of like racking up on that. I know Khan, I told you about the mental health specialist one. So you did that one. And they're pretty good. I did the grief and loss specialist because we deal with that in our schools, but our programs don't necessarily dig into that. But if you want to do a separate program, there are some programs that have thanatology specializations. If you're interested in going the grief and loss route and you want a certificate in that area. Some states also offer, they call them assessors, like almost like SPED assessors or assessment specialists. And basically you would take like maybe 5 additional courses, you get the certificate. And I know it's Missouri and Alabama. I'm not sure if that will be recognized in California or wherever you all are. So you might want to check your state ed department. But with those certificates, it also allows you to do assessments, kind of like what psychologists do. So if you want to assess students for special education, and maybe you need to give them a Connors, or they need to do a Vanderbilt, or any of those assessments that are often utilized in that SPED assessment process. And again, it's like maybe 5 classes, and you can type it in. I think it's a special education examiner or assessor, something along those lines. You can Google it. I know the University of Alabama, Birmingham has the program, and I believe the program is also in Missouri. But you, again, check your state ed department And if there are openings, it might not be in your public schools, but it might be in your charter schools. It might be in your private schools where they want to hire someone who has experience in assessment. And that's an additional skill that a lot of people don't have. So you having the school counseling piece and the assessment piece is definitely a plus.
Dr. Keo, so you mentioned the adjunct like counseling at the university level, but it's mostly the mental health counseling versus career and academic, college and career and academic. So if that's more of the mental health, that would require us to get the LPC, right? Or
I don't think so. I think it depends. So you would have to check to see what the position announcement says.
okay.
Some of them say yes, some of them say no. If you have the degree, that may suffice. I know that a lot of universities, they utilize student counselors, and of course, those people are not licensed. So they are under that supervision of the university psychologist or whoever runs that department. Sometimes they tell you have to be working on it. Sometimes they may say you have to have the license. And then there are other times where you don't have to have it at all. Like the Promise Scholars position that I showed you guys, you don't need a license for that, even though you are providing group and individual counseling, but you don't need to have an LPC for that. And a lot of that counseling is rooted in like social, emotional, and mental health, but you won't need your LPCC for that position. So just make sure you're reading the job descriptions, because even though it might be the same position across universities, different universities have different requirements.
Thank you.
I just posted the link for the board certified coach if you all are interested again in that. And like I mentioned, you don't need, coaching is not regulated. So you don't need a license or a certification to be a coach. That means that there are people out here who are calling themselves coaches who don't have a background in coaching at all, right? They have life experience. I am not encouraging you to do that. You know, we want to do things the right way. And this is just one of the many websites that are out there. Again, I'll send Khan and each of the other stuff, but this is another lane that you may want to think about, because you guys have skills and you can definitely market yourself to support, you know, some of those, whether it be more affluent families that really look for these services and can afford these services, or if you want to work in low income communities and maybe build partnerships with local schools, charter schools, or what have you, and sell yourself that way. You can work as a consultant or a speaker. You can connect with universities, so you can connect with USC. Maybe Dr. Riggio may have some information. Dr. Trahan, myself, we may have information on how you can continue to kind of grow and put yourself out there. We may be able to link you to other organizations or individuals who are interested in your services. So that will definitely take networking, right? Because you're like a walking billboard, but it's worth it. And there are people who are making really good money and really enjoy this type of work.
Dr. Q, is so good to see you, by the way. It's
Hi,
very
Gabriel.
nice. And thank you, Ken and Itza, for organizing this. I have just a quick question. You mentioned that you added an LPC when you graduated.
Yes.
How was that transition? Because I am kind of considering doing the same. I'm just, you know, it might be a license that I'm interested. How does that work? How does that work? Do you need another master's degree, or, you know?
So I did not get another master's degree. Actually, the school psychologist in the building where I was a special education teacher, she actually mentioned it to me. So in New York, it's not called an LPCC, it's called an LMHC. Same thing, just different letters, alphabet soup, whatever. So she's like, yeah, you know, they grandfathered me in. So they gave her the license because she had just became a licensed psychologist. So she left the schools, had her own private practice. New York State sent her the license, like, here you go. This was back in like, I don't know, 2005, 2006, when they were giving away licenses. Of course, when I found out about it, they weren't giving them away anymore. But they did have programs where if you had already graduated from a counseling program or a related area, you could take 5 additional courses and get what they called an advanced certificate. So the courses were like, I think I took like another ethics course. I had to do practicum and internship again. There was a course on psychopharmacology. There was a course on abnormal disorders. It was more foundations to mental health counseling, but it was like basic courses. And they took some of my courses from my school counseling program. So I think they required human development, but because I had already taken it, they just transferred that over. But I only sat for 5 classes. It took me maybe about a year. So I did that while I was still teaching. The courses were fully online. And when I got the advanced certificate, New York said, okay, now that you got these 5 classes, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years or 2,000 hours of supervision for you to get your license. So that meant that I was now allowed to work a full-time job or get hours elsewhere as an intern for free, however, but I was now allowed to work a full-time job in an agency as a clinician. I couldn't represent myself as an LPC, but I could represent myself as an LPC associate or an LPC intern or whatever they call it. I ended up moving to DC. So I took my 48 credits from my school counseling, my additional 5 credits and my little stank certificate, and I went to DC. And where I worked in the school, thankfully, there was an after-school program that was run by an LPC. So guess what? I got my hours. I stayed at that school for probably about 2 years. I was able to get my hours. I did not get paid, but I didn't mind because it was allowing me to connect with students. It was an alternative school. He signed off on the hours I did. I stayed after school. So our program ended at about 2 o'clock. I did it from 2 to 6, Monday through Friday, until I was able to get all of my hours. And then once I got my hours, I sat for the NCE, which was the exam in Washington, DC. After I passed the exam, they mailed me my license. Now, of course, unfortunately, because the boards, we have 50 different boards, the boards decide what you do and in what order it should be done. So what I explained to you was the process in DC, because I remember I left New York, so I took my stuff with me. But someone in Georgia told me, well, no, that's not how it works here. You get your classes, but you have to take your test first and then you get your hours. I said, oh, no. With us, we got our hours first and then we took our test. So I say that to say it's very important for you to look to see what your state licensing board requires, because my state may say one thing and your state may say another. And I'm going to let you guys know now, Florida and California are the 2 most difficult states to get this credential in. I don't know how close you all live to other states. California is a huge state, but if you live close to, let's just say, the Nevada border or the Oregon border, if you live close to the Arizona border, you may want to consider getting a license in a neighboring state. So if you all are familiar with Washington, D.C., we border Maryland and Virginia. So guess what? A lot of people who live in that area have licenses in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Most of my colleagues are licensed in at least 2 states. And even though those states have different requirements, you're able to really utilize the classes that you took and the exam that you took. So for example, I'm working on Maryland now. So because I'm licensed already, I can take what I already did in DC and transfer it over to Maryland. And what they'll tell me is, okay, Taquina, you need to do this or you need to do that. There's something outstanding I need to do. Maryland requires a law exam. So I had to take a multiple choice law exam and it was $100, but that's what they required. DC didn't require me to do that. So again, that's why it's so important to look to see what the states require. But now that we have telemental health counseling, now that we're doing virtual online counseling, there are so many opportunities for folks to work online. Like, even though I live in South Carolina, I can see my DC clients from the comfort of my own home on the computer. I'm not allowed to see other clients because I'm not allowed to practice in any other states, but I can still see my DC clients even though I currently reside in South Carolina. So if you have a Nevada license or an Arizona license and you live in California, you are still allowed to see clients in the states that you're licensed in. So you might want to think about what those other avenues look like. I'll also tell you that with California, if you don't have a license at all, it seems very, very difficult to get the license. But if you have a license already, like Dr. Span, who also teaches in our program, he's also licensed over here in the East Coast. He was able to take whatever extra classes California asked him to. He already had the exam. He already had his hours. He had all that stuff. And he was able to get licensed as an LPCC. And he didn't graduate in California. He didn't take a program in California at all. So I say that because I know that there was an email sent out, and I know I've been talking to Dr. Riggio about this as well, about how can you guys kind of benefit from that. And California just makes it so difficult. But I would say, just like I did, don't just kind of box yourself into California. Look to see what other options are available. I'm also allowed to provide counseling internationally. So in other countries where there is no LPC, and there are expats that live there. Let's just say I had a client who lived in New Mexico and she moved to China. I can still provide counseling to her, even though she lives on the other side of the world. So there are a lot of expats that live in various countries all over our world, and you can still provide counseling services to them, even though you don't have a license in China, because there is no LPC in China. There is no LPC in Australia, but I had clients in Australia. I had clients in South Africa. I had a client in England, right? But I don't have licenses in those areas, but we are allowed to see clients in those areas. So that's something else to think about. I hope I answered your question, Gabriel.
Yes, thank you.
I kind of went off a little bit. I'm sorry. Any other questions or comments? Anything about the interview process? Anything about job searching or anything else additional?
It is a safe space, y'all. We can all ask questions. There's no such thing as a silly question.
Well, if no one has any questions, or if you don't have questions right now, but something comes up, you guys can send us an email and we can always ask Dr. Q for you and put it on our website for everyone to see. I just want to say thank you for everyone for calling in, and Dr. Q, thank you so much for all that information. It's been very, very helpful, and I'm sure it's been helpful for all of you guys that have called in. So if there's no other questions, Itza, do you have anything else to say, to add?
No,
You
thank you all.
Yeah, and Dr. Q, if you can stay a few seconds after, we have something to ask you
For sure.
as a SCoT board. But thank you guys for calling in.